Cook County Jail in Chicago is one of the largest single-site jails in the United States. According to public records, court filings, and decades of investigative reporting, it has long been a pressure point where gang influence, overcrowding, mental health crises, and systemic failures collide. This documentary examines how a jail designed to hold people temporarily became one of the most dangerous detention centers in America, shaping lives far beyond its concrete walls. The doors of Cook County Jail never really close. They slam, they echo, they grind against steel frames worn down by decades of use, but they never feel final. According to records from the Cook County Sheriff's Office, tens of thousands of people cycle through this complex every year. Some stay a night, some stay months. A few stay long enough for the jail to reshape who they are. The first thing people notice is not the size, even though the jail once held more than 10,000 detainees at a time. It's the noise, a constant hum of movement, voices bouncing off concrete, metal doors clanging shut, radios crackling, and distant shouts that fade before anyone can tell where they came from. Former detainees interviewed by journalists have described it as a sound that never lets your nervous system rest. Even when it's quiet, it feels like it's waiting to erupt. Cook County Jail sits on Chicago's west side, a sprawling complex that has existed in some form since the 1920s. According to county archives, it was built to detain people awaiting trial, not to warehouse long-term populations. But as crime waves rose, laws changed, and court backlogs grew, the jail expanded into a self-contained city of cell blocks, medical units, courtrooms, and tunnels. Investigative reports would later describe it as one of the most overcrowded and volatile detention centers in the country. Here is the contradiction that defines Cook County Jail. On paper, it is not a prison. The majority of people inside have not been convicted of a crime. They are legally presumed innocent. According to court filings and public data, many are held because they cannot afford bail or are waiting for hearings delayed by an overwhelmed court system. Yet the conditions inside have often rivaled, and sometimes exceeded, those of maximum security prisons. According to reporting by the Chicago Tribune and oversight findings from the U.S. Department of Justice, Cook County Jail has struggled for decades with violence, gang control, and mental health emergencies. At various points, it has been described as one of the largest mental health facilities in the United States, not by design but by default. Thousands of detainees with serious mental illnesses have passed through its doors, many without consistent treatment or support. The story begins on an ordinary weekday morning. A bus rolls through the outer gate, past coils of razor wire and concrete barriers. Inside the bus sits a group of men in county-issued clothing, wrists cuffed, eyes fixed forward. Among them is someone we'll call Luis R., a composite name used to protect privacy. His experience reflects accounts documented in public defender testimony and investigative reporting. Luis is in his mid-20s. He has been arrested before, but never brought here. As the bus slows, he feels his stomach tighten. He has heard the stories. Everyone in Chicago has. People talk about Cook County Jail the way others talk about storms or fires. Not with curiosity, but with warning. When the bus doors open, the smell hits first. Disinfectant mixed with sweat and something older, something that never quite leaves concrete no matter how often it's scrubbed. Officers shout instructions. The line moves forward in small, uneven steps. Intake begins. According to county procedures outlined in court documents, intake at Cook County Jail is meant to be standardized. Personal property is confiscated. Names are logged. Medical screenings are conducted. But according to numerous lawsuits and federal oversight reports, the reality has often been chaotic. Staffing shortages, overcrowding, and sheer volume have pushed the system beyond its limits. Luis answers questions quickly. He watches the nurse's eyes as she checks boxes on a form. Mental health history? Any medications? Any thoughts of harming yourself or others? He says no, not because it's entirely true, but because he wants to move forward, not draw attention. Advocacy groups have long argued, according to public filings, that this moment is where many detainees fall through the cracks. Once processed, Luis is assigned to a housing unit. As he walks down the corridor, he notices the walls are scuffed and marked, layers of paint covering years of impact. The doors are thick, steel, with narrow windows scratched from the inside. Somewhere down the tier, someone is yelling. Somewhere else, someone's laughing. Cook County Jail is not a single building. It is a network of divisions, each with its own reputation. According to investigative reporting, some units have historically been dominated by specific gangs, while others were known for high concentrations of people with mental illness. The layout itself has been criticized in oversight reports for blind spots and poor sight lines, making supervision difficult even under ideal conditions. Inside Luis's unit, the atmosphere is tense but controlled. Men sit on bunks or stand in small groups. Conversations are quiet, guarded. He quickly realizes that everyone is watching everyone else. Not openly, but constantly. According to former detainees interviewed by journalists, this is how power operates here. Observation first, action later. Cook County Jail has long been shaped by Chicago's gang landscape. According to court filings and law enforcement testimony, street gangs that dominate neighborhoods on the outside often maintain influence on the inside. This influence does not always look like open violence. Sometimes it looks like organization, control over phones, control over showers, control over who feels safe sitting where. Officials have disputed the extent of gang control at various times, but internal reports and independent investigations have consistently found that informal hierarchies exist within many housing units. These hierarchies can shift quickly, especially as new detainees arrive and others leave. As Luis settles onto an open bunk, an older man leans toward him and speaks quietly. Not threatening. Informational. Simple rules. Don't stare. Don't take what isn't offered. Don't ask questions about things that aren't your business. Luis nods. He understands this language. It is the language of survival. Across the jail, similar scenes play out every hour. According to public data, Cook County Jail processes thousands of admissions and releases every month. This constant churn creates instability. People do not have time to adjust before the environment shifts again. According to correctional experts cited in news reports, this instability is one of the factors that makes large jails particularly dangerous. Violence at Cook County Jail has been extensively documented. Court filings detail assaults between detainees, attacks on staff, and incidents where medical or mental health emergencies escalated due to delayed response times. Federal monitors have repeatedly warned county officials that conditions inside the jail posed serious risks. One of the most disturbing aspects, according to investigative reporting, has been the treatment of detainees with mental illness. For years, the jail has operated under consent decrees and court oversight related to inadequate mental health care. Reports describe individuals held in segregation-like conditions, sometimes for behavior linked directly to untreated illness. According to the New York Times and Chicago Tribune, there were periods when people experiencing severe psychiatric crises were confined for extended stretches, leading to lawsuits and public outcry. Officials acknowledged failures, promised reforms, and implemented new policies. But advocates argue that progress has been slow and uneven. Back in the housing unit, the first night approaches. The lights dim but do not turn off completely. According to multiple detainee accounts, this half-light is one of the hardest things to adjust to. It blurs time. It keeps your body alert when your mind needs rest. Luis lies on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He listens. Footsteps. A cough. Someone whispering. Somewhere down the tier, a brief argument flares, then fades. No officers rush in. According to public oversight findings, staff are often stretched thin, supervising large numbers of detainees across multiple units. Cook County Jail has been described in official reports as a place where response times can be dangerously slow. Broken radios, locked doors, confusion about protocols. Each small failure adds weight to an already overloaded system. The next morning, Luis witnesses his first incident. It starts with a disagreement over phone access. Voices rise. Bodies move closer. For a moment, it feels like the entire unit is holding its breath. Then someone shoves someone else. Officers respond quickly this time, separating the men before it escalates further. But the message lingers. This is how fast things can change. According to data compiled by watchdog groups, many serious incidents inside the jail begin with minor disputes. Limited resources, stress, and constant surveillance create an environment where small triggers can lead to explosive outcomes. As the day unfolds, Luis begins to understand the rhythm of the place. Count, meals, lock in, release, repeat. The routine is strict, but the underlying tension never disappears. People adapt in different ways. Some become hyper-alert. Others withdraw completely. Cook County Jail's reputation did not form overnight. It was built over decades through a combination of policy decisions, budget constraints, and social realities far beyond the jail's walls. According to criminologists and legal scholars, the jail reflects larger failures in the criminal justice system, from cash bail practices to the lack of community-based mental health care. By nightfall, Luis feels exhausted in a way he has never felt before. Not just physically, but mentally. He realizes that survival here is not about strength alone. It is about awareness, about understanding the invisible systems that operate alongside the official ones. And this is only the beginning, because Cook County Jail is not just a place where people wait for court dates. It is a place where alliances form, where grudges take root, and where decisions made in moments of pressure can echo long after someone walks back out into the city. We go deeper inside the jail's internal power structures, examining how gangs, overcrowding, and institutional failures collide, and why Cook County Jail has remained one of the most feared detention centers in America, according to public records, court filings, and decades of investigation. The doors never really close, and once you've been inside, part of it follows you out. The deeper you go into Cook County Jail, the more the rules change. Not the written ones posted on walls or read aloud during intake, but the unwritten systems that govern survival. According to court filings, federal oversight reports, and investigative journalism, these informal systems have existed for decades, evolving alongside the jail itself. They are not officially acknowledged, but they are widely documented, and they shape nearly every moment of life inside. By his third day, Luis R. understands that Cook County Jail is not just overcrowded. It is layered. Every unit has a hierarchy, every hallway has a reputation, and every movement carries meaning. People learn quickly where to stand, where not to look, and when silence is safer than words. According to public reports, the jail's sheer size makes uniform control almost impossible. At various points, Cook County Jail has housed more detainees than any other jail in the United States. Oversight agencies have repeatedly warned that staffing levels have not kept pace with population growth. The result is a system that often reacts instead of anticipates. Luis notices this during morning movement. Officers open doors in sequence, calling out numbers. The pace is rushed. One officer watches 3 directions at once. Another speaks into a radio that crackles with interference. According to testimony from correctional officers in labor hearings, equipment failures and understaffing are routine, not exceptional. As detainees move toward the day room, the atmosphere shifts. Conversations grow quieter. People cluster instinctively. According to investigative reporting by local and national outlets, many housing units inside Cook County Jail have historically been influenced by Chicago's street gangs. These affiliations are not always obvious, and they are not always violent. Often, they function as systems of protection and control. Luis is approached by a man who introduces himself casually. No threats, no bravado, just information. Which phones are open, which tables are neutral, which areas are better avoided. The man doesn't claim authority, but others listen when he speaks. According to former detainees interviewed in news reports, this is how power often presents itself inside the jail. Quiet, efficient, normalized. Gang influence inside Cook County Jail has been documented extensively in court records and investigative articles. The jail's transient population makes long-term control difficult, but short-term dominance possible. People arrive from the same neighborhoods, carrying the same rivalries and alliances. When those dynamics collide in a confined space, the consequences can be severe. Officials have repeatedly stated that they work to separate rival groups and prevent coordinated activity. According to public filings, classification systems are used to assess risk. But watchdog groups argue that limited space and high turnover undermine those efforts. When beds are scarce, separation becomes a luxury. By midday, Luis witnesses another incident. A detainee begins shouting at someone across the day room. The words are sharp-coded. Others tense, watching closely. According to correctional experts cited in investigative reporting, verbal confrontations are often tests, signals, a way to establish boundaries without physical contact. An officer intervenes before it escalates. The men are separated. Names are taken. The unit returns to a low hum. But the tension remains like static in the air. Luis realizes that calm here is not peace. It is a pause. Cook County Jail has long been associated with violence, but the story is more complicated than headlines suggest. According to Department of Justice findings and county reports, many of the most serious incidents involve individuals experiencing mental health crises. The jail has been under federal oversight for years due to failures in providing adequate psychiatric care. At one point, according to court documents, more than a third of the jail population had been diagnosed with a mental illness. Journalists have described the facility as one of the largest mental health institutions in the country, operating within a correctional framework that was never designed for that role. Luis sees this firsthand when a man in the unit begins pacing, muttering to himself. His movements grow erratic. He shouts at no one in particular. Some detainees back away. Others laugh nervously. Officers approach cautiously. According to public health experts cited in oversight reports, moments like this are among the most dangerous, not because of intent, but because of unpredictability. The man is eventually escorted out, restrained but unharmed. The unit exhales. But Luis can't shake the image. He later learns from another detainee that the man has been in and out of the jail for years, cycling through arrest, release, and relapse. According to investigative reporting, this pattern is common, driven by a lack of community-based treatment options. The afternoon brings court movement. Lines form. Shackles clink. The process is slow, mechanical. According to court administrators, delays are common due to overloaded dockets and staffing shortages. People wait for hours for hearings that last minutes or are postponed entirely. Luis returns from court exhausted and frustrated. His case has been continued again. No resolution. More waiting. According to legal advocates, prolonged pretrial detention is one of the most damaging aspects of the system. People lose jobs, housing, and family connections while presumed innocent. Back in the unit, the atmosphere has shifted again. A new group of detainees arrives. Fresh faces. New variables. According to former officers interviewed by journalists, intake surges often increase tension. Nobody knows who the new arrivals are connected to or what conflicts they bring with them. Luis watches as people subtly reposition themselves. Bunks are reassigned without official instruction. Personal items move. These changes happen quickly, quietly. According to sociologists who have studied jail environments, informal order often fills the gaps left by institutional limitations. As night approaches, the unit grows louder. The dayroom television blares. Someone argues over a seat. Officers issue warnings. According to internal incident logs referenced in public reporting, evenings are peak hours for conflicts. Fatigue, stress, and frustration collide. Then it happens. A fight breaks out near the phones. It's fast and chaotic. Two men swing at each other. Others jump back. Officers rush in, shouting commands. According to oversight reports, response times vary widely depending on staffing and layout. This time, officers manage to separate the men quickly. One detainee is taken out with visible injuries. Another is restrained and removed. The unit is locked down. Everyone returns to their bunks. The television goes silent. The lights dim. Luis sits on his bunk, heart racing. He was nowhere near the fight, but the adrenaline lingers. According to detainee accounts collected by journalists, This is one of the hardest parts of jail life. Even when you're not involved, you absorb the stress. During lockdown, whispers travel. Speculation fills the silence. Who started it? Why? What happens next? According to correctional experts, rumors can be as destabilizing as actual incidents. They shape behavior, fuel fear, and sometimes provoke retaliation. Cook County Jail has been criticized for years for its use of lockdowns. According to civil rights lawsuits, prolonged lockdowns have been used to manage staffing shortages rather than respond to specific threats. Detainees have reported being confined for hours or days with limited access to showers, phones, or medical care. Luis lies back, staring at the ceiling. He thinks about the outside world, about how normal life feels impossibly distant. According to mental health professionals cited in court testimony, this sense of disconnection can develop rapidly in detention settings, especially for people unaccustomed to confinement. The next morning brings another count, another release, another cycle. But something has changed. The unit feels tighter, more watchful. The fight has shifted the balance. According to former detainees interviewed in investigative pieces, incidents like this often lead to increased pressure, both from staff and from informal power structures. Luis is pulled aside briefly by someone he recognizes from the first day. No threats, just a warning. Stay out of it. Keep your head down. According to public defender accounts, this kind of guidance is common, especially for people perceived as neutral. As the days pass, Luis begins to notice patterns. Who talks to officers? Who never does? Who moves freely and who stays put? According to court filings, retaliation against perceived informants has been a long-standing concern inside the jail. Even unconfirmed suspicion can put someone at risk. Cook County Jail's internal dynamics are shaped not only by detainees, but by policy decisions made far beyond its walls. According to investigative reporting, budget constraints have limited staffing and programming. Political debates over bail reform, sentencing, and jail closure have stalled long-term solutions. At various points, county leaders have proposed closing or downsizing the jail. Advocacy groups have pushed for alternatives to detention, especially for nonviolent offenses and mental health cases. But according to public records, progress has been uneven, and the jail remains a central fixture of Chicago's justice system. Luis learns about the jail's past through fragments of conversation. Older detainees talk about riots, lawsuits, federal intervention. According to historical reporting, Cook County Jail has been the subject of multiple Justice Department investigations, consent decrees, and reform efforts over the years. One name comes up repeatedly: the Mental Health Consent Decree. According to court documents, this federal agreement was imposed after findings that detainees with serious mental illness were being mistreated, sometimes held in solitary conditions that worsened their symptoms. The county agreed to sweeping reforms, including increased staffing and improved treatment. But according to more recent oversight reports, implementation has been inconsistent. Staffing shortages persist, training gaps remain, and the jail continues to function as a de facto mental health facility. Luis sees the consequences of this one afternoon when a detainee begins banging on his cell door, screaming for help. Officers respond, but slowly. According to public health advocates, delays in crisis response can escalate situations unnecessarily. Eventually, a mental health team arrives. The detainee is taken away. The unit settles. But the image stays with Luis. He realizes that danger here is not always intentional. Sometimes it is systemic. As the week draws to a close, Luis feels himself changing. He is more guarded, more alert. He speaks less. According to psychologists who study incarceration, this adaptation is common. People learn to minimize risk by minimizing presence. But Cook County Jail does not allow invisibility forever. Sooner or later, everyone is tested. Through conflict, through delay. The jail is not just a holding space. It is a crucible. According to decades of reporting, it has shaped the trajectories of countless lives, often in ways that extend far beyond the duration of confinement. As Luis lies awake one night, listening to the familiar hum of the building, he understands something fundamental. Survival here is not about winning. It is about enduring. By the time the third week begins, the pressure inside Cook County Jail is no longer subtle. It is visible, documented, and increasingly difficult to contain. According to federal court records, inspector general reports, and investigative journalism, this is the phase where systems under strain stop bending and start breaking. For Luis R., the shift is unmistakable. Officers are shorter with detainees. Counts take longer. Movements are canceled without explanation. According to internal memos later cited in court filings, staffing shortages have reached critical levels. Mandatory overtime has exhausted officers. Sick calls have surged. Entire housing units are being managed by fewer people than policy recommends. Inside the unit, tension sharpens into something brittle. The first sign comes during medical call. A line forms outside the door, longer than usual. Men wait quietly at first, but impatience creeps in. One detainee steps out of line, insisting he has been waiting for days. Another accuses him of cutting. Voices rise. According to public oversight reports, medical access has been one of the most persistent failures at Cook County Jail, with delays sometimes stretching hours or days. An officer intervenes, ordering everyone back. The door closes. Medical call is canceled. The reaction is immediate. Someone slams a fist into the wall. Another curses loudly. Luis feels the temperature of the room change. According to correctional psychologists cited in investigative reporting, moments like this often act as ignition points, not because of the incident itself, but because of accumulated frustration. Later that day, a lockdown is announced. No explanation, just an order. According to civil rights lawsuits filed over the past decade, lockdowns at Cook County Jail have frequently been used as emergency management tools rather than responses to specific threats. Detainees report being confined for extended periods with limited access to showers, phones, or recreation. County officials have acknowledged the practice, citing safety concerns and staffing limitations. Luis sits on his bunk as hours pass. The lights remain on. The air grows stale. Conversations die out. People retreat into themselves. According to mental health experts who testified in federal hearings, prolonged confinement under these conditions can exacerbate anxiety, depression, and aggression. Then, late in the evening, shouting erupts from a neighboring unit. The sound carries through the concrete, sharp and unmistakable. Commands, screams, the crash of something heavy hitting metal. Luis doesn't see what happens, but he feels it. Everyone does. According to former detainees interviewed by journalists, violence in one unit often ripples outward, changing behavior elsewhere almost instantly. The next morning, rumors spread. A detainee injured. Officers hurt. A use of force incident under review. According to public records, these incidents are routinely investigated, but findings are often delayed or redacted. For those inside, the lack of information fuels anxiety. Movement resumes, but cautiously. Officers wear heavier protective gear. Radios buzz constantly. According to union statements and oversight findings, increased radio traffic often signals heightened alert status. Luis is escorted to court again. This time, the hearing is brief. Another continuation. No trial date. No release. According to data published by legal advocacy groups, thousands of people held at Cook County Jail experience repeated delays, spending months or even years detained pre-trial. On the transport bus, Luis hears a conversation that sticks with him. Two men discuss someone who didn't make it back from another unit. According to reports, no details, just fragments. According to investigative journalists, detainee deaths inside the jail have been a recurring issue, drawing scrutiny from the Department of Justice and Cook County Inspector General. Back in the unit, the mood is darker. Someone has taped a piece of paper to the wall with a handwritten message. No names, just anger. Officers remove it quickly. According to internal policy documents referenced in lawsuits, unauthorized postings are prohibited, often viewed as potential incitement. That night, another crisis unfolds. A detainee experiencing a mental health episode begins screaming, repeatedly striking his head against the cell door. Others shout for help. According to consent decree monitoring reports, such incidents are common and require immediate intervention by trained mental health staff. Minutes pass, then more minutes. Luis watches as officers arrive, trying to calm the man through the door. The detainee doesn't respond. According to witness accounts later included in legal filings, delays in response have sometimes led to serious injuries or fatalities. Eventually, a response team arrives. The man is restrained and removed. The unit falls silent. The next day, Luis learns that the detainee was transferred to a medical unit. According to public health reporting, outcomes in these cases vary widely. Some people receive treatment. Others return unchanged, cycling through the same crises. This is the breaking point Cook County Jail has been approaching for years. According to federal oversight findings, the combination of overcrowding, mental illness, understaffing, and aging infrastructure has created conditions where failure is not hypothetical, but inevitable. Luis begins to notice how officers are changing too. They speak less. They move faster. According to interviews with correctional staff published in investigative pieces, burnout is widespread. Officers report feeling unsupported, overwhelmed, and constantly at risk. One officer confides quietly to a detainee within earshot of Luis. This place is eating everyone alive. According to labor arbitration records, similar sentiments have been raised repeatedly by staff unions. The following week, a major incident occurs. It starts during evening movement. Two groups cross paths in a corridor not designed for high traffic. Words are exchanged, then blows. According to later news reports, the fight escalates quickly, drawing in multiple detainees. Officers attempt to intervene, but are outnumbered. Alarms sound. Units lock down. Emergency response teams deploy. Luis is ordered to the floor, hands visible. He hears boots running, radios shouting codes. According to official incident summaries, this type of response is reserved for serious disturbances. When it ends, several detainees are injured. At least one officer is taken to the hospital. According to public reporting, such incidents have prompted renewed calls for reform and oversight. In the aftermath, the jail tightens its grip. Lockdowns extend. Privileges are suspended. According to civil rights groups, collective punishment is a frequent consequence of individual incidents, raising legal and ethical concerns. Luis feels the weight of it immediately. Days blur together. He loses track of time. According to psychologists, this temporal disorientation is a common effect of prolonged detention under restrictive conditions. Outside the jail, the incident makes headlines. Local news reports cite anonymous sources, official statements, and past warnings. Advocacy groups call it predictable. County officials promise investigation. Inside, none of that matters. What matters is survival. Luis begins to withdraw completely. He eats quickly. He speaks only when necessary. According to former detainees, this stage is often described as going quiet, a strategy to avoid attention. But attention finds people anyway. One afternoon, Luis is approached by officers and told he is being moved. No explanation. According to public defender testimony, sudden transfers are common and often traumatic, especially when they involve separation from familiar environments. Luis is placed in a different unit. New faces, new rules, new tensions. According to sociological studies of jail populations, transfers often reset the survival calculus entirely. That first night, he lies awake, listening to unfamiliar sounds. The same hum, the same echoes, but something feels different, more volatile. According to investigative reporting, certain units within Cook County Jail have historically been more prone to violence due to population mix and staffing challenges. Luis understands now that the jail is not a single experience. It is many, fragmented, uneven, unstable, and as the weeks pass, he realizes that the system is not correcting itself. It is circling. According to federal monitors, meaningful reform requires sustained investment, political will, and structural change. But inside these walls, those debates feel abstract. What is concrete is the fear, the waiting, the knowledge that another incident is always possible. This is the reality documented in courtrooms and headlines, but lived minute by the people inside. And as pressure continues to build, the question is no longer whether something will give, but what and who will bear the cost. We examine the fallout, the investigations, the lawsuits, the lives altered permanently, and the legacy Cook County Jail leaves behind, not just for those detained, but for a justice system struggling to confront its own limits. By the time the investigations begin, the damage is already done. That is the uncomfortable truth repeated again and again in court filings, inspector general reports, and sworn testimony about Cook County Jail. Oversight comes later. Accountability comes later. Reform is promised later. But for the people who lived through the collapse points inside those walls, later means nothing. For Luis R., the fallout begins quietly. Weeks after the corridor fight, he is called to a small interview room. Two people sit across from him. One introduces herself as part of an internal review team. The other takes notes without speaking. According to public records, Cook County Jail is required to conduct administrative reviews following serious incidents involving injuries, lockdowns, or use of force. Luis is asked what he saw, what he heard, whether officers gave commands, whether detainees complied. He answers carefully, not because he is hiding anything, but because he has learned the most important rule inside the jail. Words have consequences long after the moment passes. According to defense attorneys and civil rights advocates, detainees often fear retaliation, delayed court dates, or unfavorable housing decisions after participating in investigations. The interview lasts less than 10 minutes. No follow-up questions. No explanation of what happens next. That is how most of these stories end on the inside. Briefly, abruptly, without closure. Outside the jail, the machinery of accountability moves more slowly, but far more visibly. News outlets publish timelines. Advocacy organizations release statements. Legal filings appear in public dockets. According to federal court documents, multiple lawsuits related to conditions at Cook County Jail remain active or unresolved, alleging violations of constitutional protections, including failures to provide adequate medical care and safe living conditions. County officials respond with familiar language. Investigations are ongoing. Reforms are underway. Staffing challenges are being addressed. According to public budget records, millions of dollars are allocated toward training, infrastructure upgrades, and compliance monitoring. And yet, year after year, similar incidents recur. This pattern is not speculative. It is documented. According to a series of Department of Justice findings and independent monitoring reports, Cook County Jail has struggled for decades to meet federally mandated standards, particularly in mental health care, suicide prevention, and use of force oversight. Consent decrees are signed. Compliance plans are drafted. Deadlines are extended. Inside, life continues unchanged. Luis eventually learns the outcome of the corridor incident not through an official notice, but through rumor. Disciplinary hearings. Some detainees transferred. Some officers placed on administrative leave pending review. According to publicly available disciplinary records, such outcomes are common, but rarely transparent to those affected. No one explains why certain people were moved and others were not. No one explains how decisions were made. The lack of clarity becomes its own form of punishment. Months pass. Luis' case finally moves forward. A plea offer is made. According to court filings, pretrial detention pressures often influence defendants' decisions, especially when release dates remain uncertain. Luis accepts a deal. It is not the outcome he hoped for, but it ends the waiting. On the day he is transferred out of Cook County Jail, he walks the same corridors he once entered filled with fear. This time, he feels something different. Not relief, not closure, something heavier. He realizes that while he is leaving the building, the experience is not leaving him. This is a theme echoed repeatedly in post-release interviews with former detainees. The jail does not end at the gate. It follows people into courtrooms, into homes, into sleep. For some, the fallout is far worse. According to public reporting, several detainees involved in or adjacent to the incidents that triggered the lockdowns suffered lasting injuries. Others experienced significant mental health deterioration. Families filed wrongful death lawsuits following deaths in custody, citing delays in medical care or inadequate supervision. These cases wind their way through the courts for years. Officers are not spared either. Union filings and arbitration records reveal high rates of burnout, PTSD symptoms, and early retirement among correctional staff. Officers testify about fear, exhaustion, and moral injury. Many describe feeling trapped between policy mandates and impossible working conditions. Cook County Jail becomes, once again, a national symbol, not because it is unique, but because it is visible. Criminal justice experts point out that the jail reflects broader systemic failures: underfunded public defense, cash bail practices, overcrowded courts, and the use of jails as de facto mental health facilities. According to academic studies and policy analyses, Cook County Jail houses a disproportionately high number of individuals with untreated mental illness, a reality acknowledged by county officials themselves. The legacy of the jail is written not only in incident reports, but in statistics: length of stay, suicide rates, injury counts, lawsuit settlements, and beneath all of that, human cost. Former detainees speak of hypervigilance that never fades, of waking at night to phantom alarms, of struggling to trust authority. According to psychologists who study incarceration trauma, these effects are consistent with prolonged exposure to high-stress, unpredictable environments. Families speak of watching loved ones change before their eyes. Defense attorneys speak of clients pleading guilty just to escape the jail. Judges acknowledge, on the record, that conditions of confinement influence legal outcomes. In public forums, officials promise transformation. New leadership is appointed. Task forces are formed. Reform plans are unveiled. According to recent press releases, Cook County has invested in alternative detention programs, mental health diversion initiatives, and bail reform efforts designed to reduce the jail population. Some progress is real. Population numbers fluctuate. Certain units are restructured. Oversight continues. But the legacy remains complicated. Cook County Jail stands as a warning documented in thousands of pages of public records. A warning about what happens when a system built to hold people temporarily becomes a place where time stretches endlessly. When accountability arrives after harm. When crisis management replaces prevention. For Luis, the story ends outside the walls, but not neatly. He carries the memory of fluorescent lights that never turned off, of shouting through steel doors, of silence that felt louder than noise. According to interviews with former detainees, these memories surface unexpectedly, triggered by crowds, confined spaces, authority figures. For others, the story never ends at all. Some remain inside Cook County Jail tonight, waiting for hearings, waiting for treatment, waiting for answers. And for the institution itself, the question of legacy remains unresolved. Public records will continue to accumulate. Lawsuits will continue to be filed. Investigations will continue to promise clarity. But the truest record of the jail's legacy lives in the lives shaped by it. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. Behind the headlines and the statistics, Cook County Jail endures as a place where the justice system confronts its own limits, and where the cost of delay is paid in human lives long after the doors finally open.